itu ya?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Bye, Mom.
Ya.
Max woke up to find that his dreams had just been the stuff of pipes.
I have a family.
The movie kicks off with two bookies getting attacked and killed separately by unknown assailants. Meanwhile, a young guy is taken out by a sniper not far away. Somewhere else, a man named Smith approaches another young guy at a bus station and starts telling him about a guy named Max and something called the Kansas City Shuffle. Turns out Max got himself into some serious trouble years ago. He borrowed money from the mob to bet on a fixed horse race. But the plan went sideways when the horse suddenly died mid-race. The mob wasn't happy, so they made an example of him, killing Max, his wife, and their little son, Henry. Smith explains that the Kansas City Shuffle is basically a sneaky double bluff before he tricks and kills the young guy he's been talking to. He then loads the body onto a truck and drives off. Fast forward to New York, where we meet our main guy, Slevin. He's just finished shaving when he wipes the steam off the mirror, revealing a very broken nose. Before he even has time to process much, someone starts pounding on his door. Still wrapped in just a towel, he calls out that he's coming, but the knocking doesn't stop. When he finally opens the door, a woman named Lindsay barges in, acting like she owns the place. She seems completely unfazed that the guy standing in front of her isn't who she expected, someone named Nick. Slevin cracks a joke about how her knocking made him think she was taller than she really is. Lindsay, ignoring his humor, immediately asks what happened to his nose. He tells her he got punched by someone he wasn't expecting. Then, he dives into a little story about how bad luck comes in threes. First, he lost his job. Then, when he got home, he found out his apartment building was being demolished. As if that wasn't enough, he went to his girlfriend Kelly's place, only to catch her in bed with another guy. So, needing a fresh start, he decided to visit his friend Nick in New York. On his way there, he was on a call with Nick at the airport when some random guy approached him asking for a cigarette. The next thing he knew, the guy demanded money and punched him in the face, breaking his nose. Lindsay listens to his story, but points out that he actually listed 4 bad things, not 3. She also finds it weird that the mugger didn't take his bag or his expensive-looking watch. But before she can press further, Slevin steers the conversation away by asking for her name. When she asks where Nick is, Slevin admits he hasn't seen him yet. He let himself into Nick's place because the door was already unlocked. Then, the phone rings. Slevin picks it up, but the caller immediately hangs up. Lindsay, being nosy, quickly dials back the number and pretends she dialed the wrong one. She finds out the call came from the Hotel Cheval. Now intrigued, she tells Slevin that since they know who Nick called, the next step is figuring out who called Nick. Clearly enjoying her detective moment, she even throws in a reference to Columbo before calling another number. It connects to the same hotel. Convinced that Nick might be in danger, she suggests the mystery caller could be an important lead. Out of nowhere, Lindsay realizes she's late for work and dashes out, only to run back seconds later because she forgot the sugar she originally came to borrow. But as she returns, she catches Slevin mid-movement, unintentionally getting a full view of what the towel was hiding. Embarrassed, she rushes out again. Slevin just laughs it off and heads back to the bathroom. Not long after, the doorbell rings again. Thinking Lindsay forgot something else, he quickly opens the door, only to find 2 men, Elvis and Slow, standing there. They work for someone called the Boss. Without waiting for an invitation, they grab Slevin and drag him away, mistaking him for Nick. The Boss lives in a penthouse in a high-security building and is the head of a major crime operation. When Slevin is brought in, he tries to act clever, engaging in some witty back and forth with the Boss. But the Boss isn't interested in games. He gets straight to business. He tells Slevin, thinking he's Nick, that he owes him $96,000 from gambling debts. Instead of demanding money, though the Boss offers a deal. To clear the debt, Slevin has to kill someone, specifically the son of the rabbi, another powerful crime boss. The rabbi is not just any criminal. He's an actual ordained rabbi. His son, Yitzhak, is known as the fairy due to his sexuality. The Boss wants revenge because he believes the rabbi is responsible for the murder of his own son. After laying out the job, the Boss dismisses Slevin, who is still reeling from this unexpected mess. As soon as Slevin leaves, the Boss has a conversation with a mysterious man, none other than Smith, the guy from the opening scene. Turns out, Smith had already been hired to kill the fairy. The The boss questions why Smith didn't just handle the job himself, but Smith simply replies that he will be killing someone, just maybe not who the boss expects. Meanwhile, outside the building, two guys sitting inside a van disguised as a plumbing truck snap a photo of Slevin as he exits. One of them tells the other that they need to make a call to someone named Burkowski because there's a new face in town. Back at Nick's apartment, Slevin returns to process what just happened. But before he can relax, Lindsay shows up again, ready to drag him to the Hotel Cheval. She's convinced they need to check it out, still determined to find Nick. Since she has a friend working at the hotel, she figures they can get some inside info on who made the mysterious phone call to the apartment. As Slevin flips through a newspaper, something grabs his attention. A headline about Slim Hopkins vanishing without a trace. The irony? Hopkins himself had been linked to several other unexplained disappearances. Slevin casually tells Lindsay that he actually met Slim, but when he did, the guy was already dead. Lindsay's phone suddenly rings from inside her place, and thinking it might be her roommate from the hotel, she rushes off to answer. While she's gone, Slevin starts getting dressed. Just as he's about to check the door, two men in traditional Hasidic attire show up, letting him know that someone named Shlomo wants a word. Slevin protests that he doesn't know any Shlomo, but that earns him a punch in the gut. Before he knows it, he's being dragged off again, this time to meet the rabbi. As they drive, Slevin notices something. He's being taken to the same building as the boss. However, before he can react, his captors correct him. The rabbi actually lives in the building right across the street. Turns out the boss and the rabbi used to be tight partners even until things went south. Ever since they tried and failed to kill each other, neither has dared to leave the safety of their respective penthouses. When Slevin finally meets the rabbi, their conversation turns into a verbal chess match, each trying to outwit the other. The rabbi eventually drops a bombshell. He claims that Slevin, who they think is Nick Fisher, owes him $33,000. Despite Slevin's protests, the rabbi gives him 48 hours to come up with the money. After Slevin is escorted out, the rabbi makes a cryptic call, mentioning that half of a promised payment has already been transferred to an offshore account, and the rest will be sent once an old friend is dead. Enter Smith. The rabbi asks him about Slevin, but Smith simply states that he and the kid have some unfinished business. Later on, Slevin tells the boss that he'll take care of the ferry. Meanwhile, Smith is working behind the scenes, playing both sides, making sure Nick's debts are being called in, and setting the stage for Slevin's assassination once the ferry is out of the picture. The idea? Make it look like a murder-suicide while Slevin is conveniently in the company of two crime bosses. Slevin and Lindsay plan to have dinner, but before that, Slevin arranges a meeting with the ferry. At the same time, Detective Burkowski, who's been keeping tabs on the boss and the rabbi, approaches Slevin. Burkowski, a former big-time gambler who had dealings with one of the now-dead bookies, has also caught wind that Smith is back in town after a 2-decade absence. He suspects a connection between Smith, Slevin, the boss, and the rabbi. Later, when Burkowski keeps pestering Slevin, Slevin finally gives him his full name. Slevin heads to the ferry's apartment for their date and kills him. But before he can react, Smith appears. Instead of killing Slevin, Smith finishes off the ferry himself, revealing that he and Slevin are actually working together. Slevin then brings in a dead body, Nick Fisher, the real one, before Smith swiftly eliminates the ferry's bodyguards. Knowing the guards would storm in at the first sign of trouble, Smith had planned ahead, taking them out the moment they entered through a secret passage in the wall. Once the job is done, they rig the apartment to explode. The boss and the rabbi soon find themselves tied up, waking up in the boss's penthouse. That's when Slevin walks in and drops the biggest revelation yet. The two men responsible for killing Max and his family? None other than the boss and the rabbi. And Slevin? He's not Nick Fisher. He's Henry, Max's son. Smith, the man who was originally supposed to kill young Henry, had a change of heart and instead raised him, training him to one day seek revenge. Slevin reveals that he and Smith have been methodically taking down the crime boss's bookies while stealing their financial records. They killed Nick Fisher and assumed his identity because he owed money to both the boss and the rabbi. This allowed them to manipulate both sides into calling in Nick's debts, giving them unrestricted access to their well-guarded enemies. To set things in motion, Slevin even killed the boss's son, knowing it would push the boss to hire Smith for a revenge hit on the ferry. Meanwhile, Smith tricked the rabbi into believing he'd protect the ferry in exchange for calling in Nick's debts. Now, with everything in place, Slevin puts plastic bags over the boss and the rabbi's heads, suffocating them, just like they had done to his father. As Smith leaves the scene, he shoots Lindsay. Since she had taken a picture of him while investigating Nick's disappearance, she couldn't be left alive, or so it seemed. Meanwhile, Burkowski gets a call while keeping an eye out for Slevin. He finally learns the truth about the alias Slevin Kalevra. Lucky number Slevin was the name of the horse Max had bet on, and Kalevra means bad dog in Hebrew, a callback to Smith's nickname. It all clicks. Burkowski himself had killed Slevin's mother 20 years ago to settle his own gambling debts. Realizing his fate is sealed, Burkowski barely has time to react before Slevin appears in his back seat and shoots him, bringing his revenge full circle. But that's not the end. At the bus terminal, Slevin is unexpectedly reunited with Lindsay, alive and well. Turns out, Smith had told Slevin to kill her, but instead, Slevin had revealed his real identity to Lindsay and helped her fake her own death. When Smith meets up with Slevin again, Slevin explains why he couldn't go through with it. Smith, understanding that Slevin saved Lindsay just as he had once saved him, lets it slide. As a parting gesture, he hands Slevin his father's old watch before disappearing into the shadows. In a final flashback, we see Smith rescuing young Henry all those years ago. They drive off into the night with the song Kansas City Shuffle playing on the radio, just like it did back then. And that's a wrap. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe for more awesome recaps.